and let us all do we can to build a better future.
I hate talking like this, especially towards the progressive Democrats. I truly do. I know a lot of you are burnt out by electoral politics, but we have to talk about how this election will play out. And I know for the most part, a lot of us were inspired by Bernie Sanders in 2016. He was someone who was talking about social issues and policies that needed to be discussed in America. 2016 was a very important election year to where important topics such as Medicare for all, the income inequality, the failure of our infrastructure, the failure of our political system, money in politics, and so much more was being brought to light. 2018, we saw the rise of the squad. And I think for that brief moment, maybe there was this idea, the possibility, the notion of maybe we can take things back. Maybe there could be change. Maybe we really can clean up the swamp bubble of Washington, D.C. Maybe we could really, truly bring a true political revolution into that disgusting capital, and we have people in office representing our values. Well, I'm going to speak for myself, my mistake, because I actually really thought that. I really held on to the audacity of hope. I really thought in 2020, Bernie Sanders and his campaign were going to be ready. To my surprise, I wasn't expecting the amount of failure, childlike behavior, the cuckery of Bernie Sanders himself, the foolish actions of the squad and the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I mean, they had it right there in their grasp, the ability to actually launch a political movement. They just lacked the will. They had the followers. They could stamp their feet and they could, post tweets on social media to get attention, likes. But what did we get? We saw the very people we trusted fail us. We saw the very people we thought were correct on the issues bend over backwards for the Democratic establishment. Give it praise after constantly being mocked. And now, as we are ending the midterm election cycle of 2022, the progressives are going to be put on the chopping block. Not the corporate Democrats. It's going to be the progressive movement, the idea. Things that we all believe in on some social issues. But here's the thing. They were never going to fight. I want to pull up this video here from Case Study QB, where we have Chucky Boy Todd says that if Democrats come up short, progressives will take the heat for nominating less electable candidates. Gee, progressives, do you remember electing Democrats and corporate Democrats that don't have a backbone? I don't, because last I checked, the progressive squad and Bernie Sanders are actually losing their core base of supporters because, again, Bernie Sanders and the squad are going to bat and praising the Biden-Harris administration and all these other neoliberal Democrats for selling us out. Let's hear what has to be said.
If Democrats come up short in some of these places, I think there's going to be a lot of finger pointing. Progressives are going to take some heat for forcing some certain nominees in certain states that may have been less electable than other nominees could have been, the defund the police movement, all of this. And this is where I think this problem inside of LA suddenly becomes part of it.
And I'm looking at the live stream chat. Tony Clifton, you're being way too generous. We got a crumb. Come on, man. You're being way too generous. We really got nothing. But yeah, you know what? Hey, I'll give a shout out when I need to see a shout out.
Kevin De Leon is a very prominent progressive leader, right? Here's the guy who challenged Dianne Feinstein from the left, was sort of seen as a leader of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party out there in California. And I just think that's where I think this becomes kind of messy, potentially for him, potentially for progressives. I mean, look, there's a fight in California's Democratic Party, just like there's a fight in the national party, sort of for influence, the progressive wing versus sort of the mainstream or establishment wing a little bit. And progressives have been on the march in California in particular. I think it's why you've seen Gavin Newsom try not to take a position right now, especially pre-election. That may change after the election. But this is something that I think I do think that a lot of progressive leaders ought to prepare themselves for, which is some post-election recriminations.
Again, here's a real thing we have to bring up, though. the fundamental fact is that the Democrats, specifically the progressive Democrats, the Justice Democrats and Bernie Sanders, they had the social media following. They obviously caved in to the Democratic establishment, but there was nothing stopping them, really, of them using their political capital to hold the Biden-Harris administration accountable for their actions. And what do we see with the progressive movement? Let's talk about something recent. With Roe v. Wade being overturned by the Supreme Court of the United States, they got a month-and-a-half long notice. There was nothing stopping Bernie Sanders and the squad from really rallying together on social media, to holding a real rally, to actually holding their party accountable and actually getting the votes. There was nothing really stopping the Biden-Harris administration, even the corporate Democrats, from protecting women's reproductive rights and codifying Roe v. Wade. They could have done it. Where was the squad was forced to vote? Where was the squad in Bernie Sanders for March for Medicare for All? Where was the squad in Bernie Sanders for the 3-day General Strike Summit meeting? Nowhere to be found. And now when they need us, after they delivered nothing to us, we didn't get crumbs. We got nothing. We got nothing. I can't stress that out enough. They are now demanding for our vote. And now we have people like Bernie Sanders who once again are saying that the Democrats are screwing up the message, that they're not getting things right, and it's going to cost them. Well, gee, Bernie, let me ask you this, Bernie. You went to bat for your good friend Joe Biden, the segregationist, the guy who worked with people like Strom Thurmond, gave a eulogy for somebody like Strom Thurmond. You were more than happy to praise Joe Biden, who was against desegregation, who also was in support of the war in Iraq, who gladly prostituted himself to corporations, who was even against a woman's right to choose. That's your good friend, Bernie. And now you're shocked that the Democratic leadership is losing support because the people aren't buying their BS? You had the chance to do the right thing. You had the chance to really raise the ruckus, but I guess you were such a nutless wonder, you were afraid to become Ralph Nader. And at the end of the day, at least Ralph Nader can walk around in society with his head held up high, knowing that he stood his ground and fought for his belief. What about you, Bernie? What's it like looking at the ground a lot?
In the closing days of the campaign, he plans to cross off a battleground checklist: Oregon, Nevada, Wisconsin, Florida, Pennsylvania, presenting his own views on exactly how Democrats should be talking to voters about the economy. And joining me now is Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, who, of course, caucuses with the Democrats in the Senate. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. So you've been calling on Democrats to focus on the economy, not only on other issues like abortion rights or attacking Republicans. It has been months since you've been repeating this message. The election is 16 days away. How's it going? Are you worried Democrats still have not found the right message on the economy?
Well, look, what I think, Jake, is at a time when working families are struggling, having a hard time filling up their gas tanks, paying for food, paying for prescription drugs, we are living in a nation today where the richest people are doing phenomenally well. And one of the reasons for inflation is the incredible level of corporate greed. Check out the...
Now, I won't bombard you guys with this full interview because Bernie Sanders is going to be sounding like a broken record, saying the same thing over and over again. But let's look at this. And I also want to acknowledge this message from Roger Meadows, because, again, it's the truth of it. Who are you telling, Kit? Let me ask you. Matter of fact, let's put it to the audience. What was a bigger betrayal? Are donations to Bernie or Bernie handing over his email list to the Democrats, where now we are getting nonstop texts from these mofos? Also, Kit, no need to wallow in our failed strategy. Time to pick up our faces and start right in our own backyard and get this done. I know you know some activists, and that is true. And that's what I want to let you guys know. Stop holding on to hope for these politicians to do the right thing. They never will. They're all clowns. Roger's correct. It's up to us. Because if we put these politicians on a platform, if we say that they're so great and magnificent, they're going to treat us like we're children, like we're clowns. And we see firsthand how these politicians act like clowns. They don't need to be defended. They don't need to be respected. They need to be challenged. Otherwise, we're going to be bombarded with stuff like this. Stuff like this.
You know, politics
AOC doing ASMR.
doesn't work out. I can always start one of these channels.
course, AOC, politics isn't working out, especially for you and the also fantastic squad.
Vote. Early voting starts October 29th in New York State. California early ballots just got sent out last week.
Ha 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 ha. I cry at night. You know, again, I'm going to be following the midterms, and here's what I'm going to personally do just to see how high the voter turnout will be. I'm going to compare it to 2018, of course, because it should be noted, and this should scare all the vote blue, no matter who people, that midterms statistically have low voter turnout. But we all know that the same people are throwing around their endorsements. And I really want to compare and contrast who's going to have the higher turnout. People endorsed by Trump, people endorsed by Bernie Sanders, the squad, and corporate Democrats, people endorsed by Tulsi. I want to see how the independent movement, third parties are going to do. It's going to be a little bit of some mind-numbing pain, but it's something I want to see. Because what I think is going to be happening as we pass this midterm election cycle is that more voters are going to give up on electoral politics. More voters are going to give up on it. And to which I have to say, what is the counter to this? How do we really try and implement change? And this is what I'm going to have to quote what Roger has to say. And that is, we have to go in our own backyard. We have to start building movements and organizations that are not connected to Washington, D.C. Look at all the great work that RBN is doing. Look at all the work that we see people from the Convo culture doing. Look at all the activists and organizers are speaking truth to power. Because we cannot connect ourselves to Washington, D.C. It's a fool's hope to think that anyone in that swamp bubble in the Democratic or Republican Party is going to give a damn about you. It's a failing system. And I think it's important that we at least end this segment on a humorous note. Why not? Let's have some fun here, right? Let's talk to a past version of myself. And hopefully none of you will be bombarded with any kind of labels too. Shout out to the great Jimmy Dore. The only solution right now is to wake up, don't trust corporate media, and don't vote Democrat or Republican. You want to do something good now? I mean, we could go back in the past and say, what if? Don't support the Democratic Party. Don't support the Republican Party, because look at the 20 plus years of damage that they've done to us. And if they can keep on doing it to us, they'll keep on screwing us over. Don't support the two-party system.
You, sir, sound like a white supremacist. Over to Steph.
All right. That was a great time. Awesome time being on the Jimmy Dore Show. So, folks, no matter how this election cycle turns out, don't let anyone bully you or browbeat you or wag their finger at you because, oh, you didn't vote, or maybe you voted third party or whatever. All right. At the end of the day, you make your own choice. All right. I'm going to throw my support for third parties. And because I live in a ballot initiative state, I'm going to be looking at the ballot initiatives out there. But if there's a choice between voting Democrat or Republican, I'm leaving that pamphlet blank. And that's what I'm going to do. All of you come to your own conclusions, do whatever you want to do too. But these politicians aren't entitled to your vote or your respect, because they're not going to give us respect. And Bernie Sanders is the biggest joke of them all. While I do acknowledge that, yes, he inspired me and Daniel to start Hard Lens Media, probably a lot of us to get involved in independent media and activism and, you know, following the day-to-day nightmare that is the American neoliberal political system, he has lost my respect. So, progressive Democrats, you dug this hole. We're not going to pull you out of it. Simple as that.